This is up on the roof of that. They're still in construction. I was extremely nervous when I was climbing up there. It's extremely windy in Singida. There was no walls, there was no harnesses, there was no nothing, there was no floor. It was just rebar kind of spread out. He kept saying, "You're safe, you're okay," and I said, "I don't know about that," but it got me this good view that I was able to look out and see everything all around. So you can see it's pretty sparse. There's a lot of trees. There's a few buildings, but this is Singida town. Now, I've shown pictures of the market before, but this is where I do all my grocery shopping. People come, they bring their own vegetables, they sell them. I know enough Swahili now that I can go and ask the prices and buy things myself without anyone helping me, so I'm kind of excited about that. So you look at this and you say, well, there isn't much to this. Just a couple of trees holding up a metal roof, but this is in Singida town, which is quite built up compared to the villages from around the area. Because if you go into the villages around the area, this is where you do your grocery shopping. This is a market in one of the villages nearby. It's actually extremely close to Singida town, and you can see how quickly it changes from what we would say primitive to what we would call ultra primitive. And this is only open one day a week. It's only open on Saturdays, so if you want to buy groceries, you have to buy them on that one day. So it's quite the big deal. And this was before they actually had set up, so you don't get to see it in all of its glory, but this is where people come, and it's not just for shopping, but people come to fellowship and see their friends and neighbors. Now, another contrast, just showing some different contrasts in Tanzania. This is a send-off, which we don't have in America, but before a bride gets married, her family wants to send her off. So they give her gifts and they say goodbye to her. It's something like a little wedding, but not really a wedding because it's not really a ceremony. It's just a celebration. So this is one of the villages. I preached at this. Many of the Christians, they have preaching at the weddings and at the send-offs like this. And it's just some tree poles set up in a yard with some tarps hung over it, and most of the people couldn't fit underneath it, so they gathered all around. But just to show the contrast, this is one in Moshi, and this person has more money than most of us will probably ever have. So it just shows you the great contrast. I was surprised I even got invited to this, but a friend of the family was invited, so he took me along with him. So in Tanzania, sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll see a big old house, and you'll be like, my goodness, that thing's a mansion. I saw a couple of houses. I said, are those hotels? And they said, no, those are houses. So there's some money there, but also there's a lot of poverty. And sometimes, even in town, we look at it and say, it's not that bad. But you go out into the villages where the students are, and most of them don't even have good roads that go to where they're going. Some of the villages, they have a one bus that goes in every day. It goes there, the driver sleeps the night in the village, and then he drives it back into town the next day. So if you want to go there, you have to spend the night because you're not coming back the same day. Speaking of buses, this is the bus that took me from Moshi to Singida, and I have to say I did not fall in a hole this time. Last time I got too close times where the vehicles almost fell into a hole. Well, that didn't happen, but guess what? It did break down. We had two accidents with this vehicle actually. One time we hit a car, and the bus driver, didn't stop. So the car driver followed us probably about half an hour until he got to a police checkpoint, and he got the police to stop the bus. And that was a whole big deal. We waited for about an hour just waiting while the police and the people talked it out. It's not like here where you just give insurance card and you deal with it later. You have to deal with it right then and there. All the decisions have to be made. So it took a long time. And then we're really, really close to Singida town, and something was wrong with the radiator. They had to stop the bus. It was overheating. Everyone got off the bus. They got an ox cart from one of the people in that area to bring in water, and we used it to fill in. So it was quite the issue. Now, this is one of the students. We called him Nku, which is kind of just a title of respect. It was just a joke we called him. But he's very happy, and I was very happy. And this looks like a small picture, but this is a lot of work that went into the two books he's holding in his hands. These are new books we added to the Bible School, Romans and Wisdom and Poetry. It took a bunch of people here in America a bunch of time working on the notes, and then we got them translated by, I think, 4 or 5 different people were working on the translation. And then after it gets translated, they translate it back to me, and I have to edit it. It was so much work, but we got new books in the school, and the students were so happy, and they really liked these subjects. So this is some students, workers, one neighborhood boy playing with a football that someone from New Hampshire sent with me over there. Soccer ball. We say football over in Tanzania. A soccer ball, bright green, and they loved it so much, and they kept kicking it so much that I had to pump it up every single time they wanted to play it. So they really, really enjoyed it. I had an extra one sent with me that I didn't tell them about. I said, when this one dies, I'll let them have it, but I'm not giving them two at once because I don't know what can happen to it. Now, I went over earlier than I ever go over, and so I was there for my birthday. And so I said I want to have a birthday party, which is kind of a strange thing in Tanzania. They don't usually do birthday parties. But they took it and ran with the idea. And they kept adding more stuff. I wanted something simple, just the students and the staff, but they started inviting neighbors and church members, and they added decorations. It was quite the big deal. Now, a birthday party in Tanzania is so different. Yes, you have cake, but it's not like you cut the cake and everyone just gets a slice. The birthday person cuts the cake, and every person individually walks up, and the birthday person feeds them the cake into their mouth. So I had to do that for every single person. It was quite the experience. They also call you baby all day long, like you were just born, because they say birthday, so you were born. So they called me a baby all day long. They even had a little fake baby that they made up like a bundle, and they danced around with it and called it Matthew. It was quite the weird experience for me. And so another one of our staff, Emmanuel, had a birthday the week after mine, so we had a celebration for him. And I learned my lesson about letting too many people know about it because it was too big of a deal. So we just had a small thing with just the staff members, and he was happy. Now, they did something for him that they didn't do for me. It's another tradition. On the birthday, they dump water on your head. Don't ask me why, but they didn't do it to me, but they were doing it to him. They didn't use water, they used soda, which wasn't very nice. So talking about the Bible school, this is the class. Jacob is there teaching. Jacob, I've talked about him before. He does so much for the school. He's always running errands. He's going to town. Some days he goes into town to run errands, and he comes back way late at night because nothing is done quickly in Tanzania, so it takes him all day long. So he's a teacher. Sometimes he translates for me. He pastors a church. He does so much in the Bible school. He really does so many great things in the school. Now, behind the school, it's not too far behind it, there's these little ravines. They've been created by the rain. Now, when it rains in Tanzania, it rains hard and it rains quickly. In a lot of places, there's not a lot of vegetation, which means the ground is extremely soft. So when it rains, it starts to make these little holes. And every year as it continues to rain, it turns into a big old canyon like this thing. So we were down in there. We took some of the students. Some neighborhood boys followed us along. So it was just fun to explore and climb around in there. Another interesting thing there, some of these places, they have soft sand at the bottom of them. And women go and they dig, and you'll see the water come up. And they'll sit there for more than an hour with a cup and just take the water as it seeps up from the ground and pour it into a bucket. They kind of do a social thing with it. They'll all sit around together with their children. The children will play, and they'll sit on their blankets, and they'll slowly dig, and it's amazing for me to watch that. Now, this class was going to graduate, and there's a lake nearby, and it's not really a lake, it's a pond, but it's very salty because when it rains, the water flows into it, and it doesn't have any other source. So it's got a lot of salt in it from all the times it rains and brings the dirt from other places. But a lot of the students have never seen it. This is Singida town. Almost all of them live right around it, but they have never seen it. So I said, we're going to go. And at first I thought I'd have a few. I said, whoever wants to go. I said, you don't have to go if you don't want to. But almost all the students wanted to go, so they were happy. We climbed on the rocks. There's a bunch of rocks down there. This is up on top of one set of rocks looking out towards the lake. Now, after that, there was a couple of nice hotels nearby, and they had restaurants inside of them. So I said, we'll go inside here, and we'll have some sodas. And my students, some of them just looked in amazement. They'd never been in a building that big before. They've never seen something so nicely done. The waitress gave them straws for their sodas, and I had two students try drinking the soda with the paper still on the straw. That was kind of fun. I took a picture of one. I didn't even realize he had the paper on until after I took the picture. But they really enjoyed that. They were so thankful for that little opportunity. Something small for us, going to a place and getting a soda, was quite a big deal for them. In fact, one of my students, I said this before, he had never had a soda until he come to Bible school. And then he started counting each time how many he had had. So it's just pretty crazy if you can count how many sodas you've had in your whole entire life. So these students graduated. It was quite a big deal. We had more than 200, probably about 250 people come. Last time we had a graduation, I was very strict on how many people could come from each student. And so we had almost 400 last time. So it was actually trying to keep it down to have 250. Because when you hear celebration, everyone just wants to come. And we love people to celebrate, but it brings your budget up a lot. So we had a lot of neighbors still come, and they come towards the end because they heard the music. They really didn't know the students. They really didn't care, but they come for the food. But we let them come anyway. So it was quite the big deal for the workers. They worked to cook the food. They were up before the sun was up. The moon was still up. I got a picture of that when the workers were working and the moon was still up in the sky. It was pretty crazy. So they worked really early in the morning. There was a lot of stuff, vegetables being cut. Some of the neighbors come by and helped, and we didn't pay them. They just come by to help. Students were cleaning. It was a lot of fun in one way. I like being busy, but it was also, being busy. But we pulled it off and we got everything done. And we started on time, which I love to do so much. First time I had a graduation, it was 2 hours late. The next one I think was an hour late. And the last two I've done have been directly on time, which makes me very, very happy. Which we have, like I said, some of the buses, they go out at certain times. So we had students say, I have to leave by 2 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm going to miss my bus. So we had to make sure we purposely hurried through. So we're not like the normal celebrations. Normal celebrations will go all day long. We keep it to be about 3 hours or so at the most. And one student is missing from this picture. He wasn't able to be here. I took these pictures before. I was smart this year. Normally it's so hard to get the students all together to get a picture. So before graduation, I put them in their robes and got them to take the picture, printed them out so I could send them with them when they went home. But one missed being in the picture, but I printed out the picture later. Now these are some children of the neighborhood. They were gathering after the graduation and playing with Tomani. Now Tomani is our guard. He works really hard, and these children love him. So right after the graduation, I'd gone to my room to rest a bit and come out to clean. I'd come out and it looked like disaster. There was trash everywhere. I said, this is going to take us all day long to clean up. So I started picking up one piece of trash, and Tomani told these kids, help him. And within like 5 minutes, all the trash was picked up. We're such good workers. So I gave them all candy afterwards. Now the children love to come to me and ask me for candy. Sometimes I give it to them, sometimes I don't. One little girl said she was going to the shop and she come to my door and asked for cookies. It's like she just assumed that I always had stuff like that. They don't believe. And then another day, that same little girl, she was staying with our guard, and she said, I want cookies. And I tried to tell her I don't have them. And she's like, yes, he does. He's the shop. He's got cookies. No, I don't have cookies. But the children, they love me. Some of them, I should say, some of them are absolutely terrified of me. They will see me by the road. They'll call out to me. Some of them have seen me millions of times. But every single time I walk by, they act like they've never seen me before. They run out. They follow after me, shouting, singing. They just love to see me. But some of them, they cry every single time they see me. And some of them are okay if they're at a distance. But if I come close to them, one day I was chasing a boy, and he was laughing. And then all of a sudden, like in his mind, it just flipped, and he thought, maybe this one isn't chasing me for fun. Maybe he's chasing me because he wants to hurt me. And started crying. So it's a little bit half and half with the children. Some of them are getting more used to me, but some of them still don't understand me at all. So I'm getting somewhere with them. So after graduation, I had 1 week before we would take in students again. So I went to visit my friend in Moshi. And whenever I go visit this friend, he has me doing something. I've preached in churches, I've gone to weddings, I've taught English, And here, this was a class of students that were getting ready to go into high school. Now, in Tanzania, in high school, you speak in English. The textbooks are in English, the students speak English in the class, so some of the students aren't ready for it. So they go to a class to prepare them. So this friend of mine, in his house, he was teaching these students, and he said, today you're going to be the teacher. So I taught them for 2 days, taught them a little bit of English, and their parents were very happy when they heard that a real person that speaks English was teaching their children. But it was kind of fun to teach them. I also taught couple of people about spreadsheets, which he has me do a lot, which isn't very exciting, but I guess is in high demand. Now, outside of teaching in the Bible school, I do visit some churches around to preach. This church is actually Jacob's church here in this picture, but I go to a bunch of the different students' church. I have more opportunities really than I can meet. All the time I'm having to say I can't come because there's just too many people wanting me to come, but I do try to get out when I can. This is the church that one of my students goes to. He's not a pastor, but he is an elder in that church and a teacher. And his pastor was so excited about the progress made in his life. And he said, I want you to come back again and again. This is another church. This is the church I showed you a picture earlier when I was on top of it. They're in a temporary church at this point in time, which their temporary church is bigger than a lot of the churches I go to. So it's going to be a big church in the future. In the morning, I was just going. I didn't know anyone there really. Our cook does attend that church, but I didn't know the pastor or anyone. And so in the morning, I just visited, but the pastor said, tonight you're going to preach. So I come back that night and I preached. And they wanted me to come back again and again. And that pastor wants to send his wife to Bible school next year when we take in new students. This is Pastor Sogeta. He was one of my students. He's graduated, and he was becoming a pastor of a church. And they were having a dedication ceremony for the church, so they called me to come and visit at that special ceremony. And the church wasn't finished. And besides, the church is very tiny, and there's a lot of other people gathering, so they were meeting outside under the trees. So it was kind of interesting to have church outside. And some churches, that's how they start. They start underneath the tree. They get enough people. When they get enough people, then they can start building the church. So this is their church. It doesn't have the roof on it, and it's pretty tiny, but they did this all by themselves. So it's exciting to see. My students going forward and starting churches. Now, this is another one of my students, and this church is obviously a lot bigger. This is Pastor Murrow. He's here in this church. I went there to preach. He's asked me forever to go and preach, and I just hadn't been able to, but finally I had the opportunity to go there and preach, and his people were so excited for me to come. And the funny thing about going to this church is it's one of those churches where the bus goes in and doesn't come out. So we took a motorcycle there, and there was me and my translator and the motorcycle driver on one motorcycle. And some of the places were really steep, so you can see here we stopped the motorcycle and the translator got off and he was walking to meet us because it wasn't safe enough. Well, you can always argue it was not safe enough to have 3 people on a motorcycle at any time, but it wasn't safe enough going up that steep height for him to be on the back of it. And we had another little incident there. We were just puttering along, and we ran out of gas in the motorcycle. So we called a couple of people to bring gas to us, and we waited, and we waited, and we weren't that far away. It looks like we're in the middle of nowhere, but really we weren't that far away from where people were. But the first person, because they gave him money, and they gave him a little extra money for bringing us the gas, well, he took a pit stop himself and bought himself some alcohol before he brought us the gas. So that person actually didn't make to us before we needed gas. We found someone else to bring us gas. We said, where is this person? Why isn't he coming? So finally we got gas. We only waited about half an hour. But those are the adventures. And this church, because it's such a big deal, when I go to the villages, usually when you go to preach in the morning, you're not coming home till 7 o'clock at night just because of all the process. They want to feed you. And for this church, because I knew him well, he was my student, I had before prepared him and said, if you want to feed us, we'd love for that, but please have it ready right after so we can go. But through all this and with us running out of gas, and we have to, after we rode the motorcycle, we had to get on a bus. So it's a long process. And we still got home at 5 o'clock. And my train was like, well, we got home early. I said, this doesn't really feel like early. And you go for a morning service and you're getting home at 5 o'clock at night. But it is what it is. So this is the next class. There's 5 students in this next class. Unfortunately, we started a few more, and some of them did not come back. But we have 5 students in this class. But for me, I teach the same to 10 students, 20 students, 30 students, or 5 students. And I'm very happy for these students. In some ways, it's better because you get to know the students better when it's just a handful of you. So I'm teaching Sunday School Evangelism here. Now, I teach Sunday School Evangelism, which is about how to teach, teaching class about how to teach. And I like to do a lot of hands-on activities. We do discussions, we go on field trips, we do paper crafts, and here we're doing a Bible study where we took all the resource materials and put them on the table, and together we looked at a passage of scripture and we said, what does this mean? Trying to help them see that there's more ways to teaching than just standing in front of a class and speaking. But if you involve the students with hands-on ways, then they can learn better. And so practicing what I teach, I have them put their hands to work, and they learn through that, and they really like it. And it's really good because not all of them are pastors. Some of them are Sunday school teachers. I think I had 2 in this class who are Sunday school teachers, so they really like that. Now, this young man, his name is Amani, and he's quite the testimony. Now, he comes from an Islamic family, and he had some problems in his mind where he was very unstable, and his parents had done so many things to try to help him. They took him to the witch doctor, and they tried so many different things, and they couldn't get help. And even last year, he come to the Bible school one day. His family sent him for us to pray with him, and he was just so tormented in his mind, he couldn't even sleep. All night long, the students had stayed up with him, trying to pray with him and help him. And he was supposed to stay for several days so we could help him pray through, but he just said, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. So finally we sent him home. But he continued in church, and the pastor of that village helped him so many times. And now he is so sound in his mind. I didn't even think it was the same person when I saw him again. So he joined the Bible school. Now he joined 1 semester late, but he joined, and he's doing an amazing job. He's been memorizing scriptures when I give it to him. And I've had some classes where the young men, they play, they like to go to town, they do football, whatever they can do in the spare time. But these 2 young men in this class, all the time, I found them in the classroom. This isn't class time. I just found them in the classroom one day. They're studying their Bibles. Like, they're really serious about studying, which made me so happy, especially since of where he came from. So I'm really excited about that. This is Hosea. Hosea was one of the students. He's now the chairperson of the Bible school. He's a teacher in the school, and I absolutely love him. He is always there. He's always working. He's always caring. He's such a gentle person. I'm trying to put him in that position where he's the leader of the school, but he's so humble that he's always asking me before he makes a decision. Should I do this? What should I do? He's just such a humble person. So I'm so thankful that Hosea is a part of the school. And whenever we have issues with students, he's there to help and step in. He's got that gentle personality that he can really work through problems and situations. Now, on this trip, we did a lot of improvements to the school. So we had the plan to dig water, which I will talk about later. But we said, well, before we dig water, our ground was very uneven. Like I said before, when the rain comes, it really tears up the ground. So our ground itself had a bunch of little ruts in it, and it was hard for us to build. The foundation of the dorm building, in one corner, it's even with the ground, but on the other side, it's like almost 1.5 feet. So like that's how uneven some of our ground is. So I said, really, before we build, before we go further with anything, before we even drill, we should get this ground leveled out. So we had an excavator come in, and he worked for 2 days. So it was quite the deal. First day, they didn't even take a break, but for lunch for about 20 minutes. And they got right back on it and continued working. So they worked all day long, and the next day they come back and worked again. And the ground looks so much better. Wow. Very nice, very flat. Makes me happy. And another thing, because we know if it rains, it can wash it right all the way again. So up at top, the ground above us is higher, which is part of the reason why our ground was so uneven. So we dug a ditch all the way along the top ground to get the water to go into that instead of going and destroying our ground. Another thing, when we had the excavator come in, we tore up our fence because we wanted all the ground to be flat, including the area inside the fence. Now, we had a fence that was only covering part of the ground, about a quarter of it before. So we tore up that, and it was very rough. We just used like branches from trees and took barbed wire and put it through, and we had to replace the poles about 3 times because of the termites. They're just so bad. Some of the poles were floating because the termites had eaten the underneath part, so they were just being held up by the other poles around them. Last year, one time, the termites had eaten like 4 poles in a row, and one day someone just pushed one of the poles, and the whole set of them just fell down. So we replaced them so many times. So I said, if we're going to put a new fence in, we're going to put it in and cover the whole part of the land, and we're going to not use wooden poles anymore. But that was a lot of work. So this is all because we wanted to drill water that we said we'll flatten the ground, and we said we'll have to put a new fence in. So it was quite a busy time. So we dug all the poles ourselves. We put in a new gate, and we put in a door. So now there's a gate on one side and a small door on the other side. So that way when people need to go out, they can choose one side or the other. And we had to pour these pillars to hold up the gate out of cement. So we had to build this mold, which we then pour the cement into. So they're mixing cement here. Behind them, you can see the gate. It's big enough so vehicles can come through. It was a lot of work. When I initially started, I said, well, this will take us a couple of days. It took us 2 weeks to do it. And we were just working every single day. I told the students, dig these holes. I would measure them for them, say, put them here. We would pour the cement. We had to stretch the wire. It was quite the work. And everyone joined in. We had the cooks working. We asked them to. They just didn't have any work at the time, so they joined in and helped us. So everyone put their hands together. When I was teaching a class, Jacob was working out there. When Jacob was teaching a class, I was working on the fence. It took us 2 days, but we got it all done, which I'm very happy for. And we got it done like right before I left. First, I wasn't sure if we would get it done. Now, one of the rooms didn't have a ceiling put in. We've had a problem with people saying we can do ceilings, and then they come and they can't, and it looks really terrible. So we found another person, and Jacob had seen a ceiling that they had done. So he said, we'll have these people come and do it. And they did it. I have to say I did try to help them a little bit because some of the areas just weren't quite up to my standard. So I helped them a couple of days, but we got that done as well. And this is going to bring us to talking about the water project. So this is what we did before. In this beginning of this trip, we needed water. It's not the rainy season, so water is extremely difficult to come by. There's this local hole that people go to and get their water, and people were there all day long. And some people, they know the water's not going to last forever. It's an underground spring. It bubbles up slowly, but when it's gone, you sometimes have to wait another hour before you find water there again. So some of the neighbors, they go and they get a bucket early in the morning and they can't carry it, but they'll come back to it later. They will leave the bucket there. No one's going to bother it, and they'll come back again later. So we have a problem of we had a school and we didn't have enough water for all the students. So we sent the students a couple of times to get water with a cart, and they went and they said there's no water. So I told the guard, I said, tomorrow me and you are going to go early in the morning, and we'll go there and get water before anyone else comes. And that the students saw what I did, and the next day they did it, and the next day they did it, and they were going 2 times a day, one time in the morning, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then one time at night, about 10 o'clock at night, because that's when the water was there again. Yes. Well, I tell the students what they should do, but I don't force them to do anything. Some of them, they don't like it when it's boiled because they say it tastes like smoke, but because they cook with an open flame, but still that's better than getting sick. We tried to get, with this process, we were trying to get this for cleaning and stuff, and the other water, we would get water from the government and fill up one of our tanks. So we had 2 tanks, one we put government water in and one we put this water in, to try to use both. And which, towards the end of it, we found a person that would bring water in from the government, and he would do it so cheap compared to what we were doing before. He actually had a truck with tanks on it, So it was a lot cheaper. Before, we were having a little tiny truck come and putting big old drums, like 30-gallon drums in it, and they'd take that and they'd fill it by bucket. So we found a better option, which, again, we're not going to need in the future. And this is the cart. Students would push it, and it wasn't very far, but when you're pushing a water cart, it does seem very far. And we put it in a tank, and this is one of our cooks. He was helping us clean it out because after so many times of putting water in and the tank is open, it would get dirty at the bottom. So before we'd get water again, we would clean out the tank. And so what we needed was to get water. So this is the big deal right here. This is the truck that come to drill the water. And at first I was a little nervous. And even the morning when they drilled, the man come to me and he said, "You better pray. Sometimes we dig water and we don't find it." So I was extremely nervous, but it wasn't long at all. And they found water. They actually found water a little bit closer to the surface than what they had done the survey for. So they found it 80 meters deep. Someone that knows math and conversion could convert that to feet. But here we go. We got water. A couple of pictures there of Tomeni and then me. And so we drilled it, but we don't have a pump yet. We haven't built a tower. That stuff will happen in the future. So the big part is done. The big expense, the big nerve-wracking, if we dig and we don't find water, what's going to happen? So we have water. We have lots of water. It's good water. It's not salty. So we have water. We just need to, in the future, we need to go through the steps. Get a pump, build a tower, because we'll build a tower and we'll put tanks up on that, and then that will pressure feed to all the other buildings. So we've gotten a lot done, but we still have more to do. So a lot of things done on this trip. It kept me busy and made the time go extremely quick. But I have to say, this is the trip that most was accomplished physically at the school for getting improvements done. And so thank you to everyone here who helped with that. Now, we've had so many students come to the school. We've had almost 50 students, maybe a few more than 50, that have come and graduated in the school. And we've been talking about for years, we want to have a way to get the students back so we can continue the relationships. It's true that I do go to some of the churches and that I visit with them there and I preach, but like I said, I can't get to all of them. So in a trip, you think if I'm there for 3 months, that's only so many Sundays, especially since a few Sundays I don't go somewhere. So the times to go visit the students is few. So we said, what if we had a meeting when we can call the students together? Call it a DBI convention in Tanzania. So we said we knew this teacher that one of the students knew very well, and we said, let's have her come in and teach the students for a couple of days. So I took a picture of her here because she actually wrote something on the board in English, which she must have heard somewhere, but she was teaching about pastors and leadership, and so she has SMART, and she has an acronym there that says Spirit-led, Measurable, Attainable, Realistic, and Time-targeted, about making goals and plans in your churches. And she did an amazing job, and we had more than 20 students come back and join us for that. So here they are, they're all eating. It was very exciting for me to have them all come back and to see. And some of them had never seen the school before. They had seen what we had before, the borrowed buildings we had used, but they had never seen the school. So they were very excited to come back and see it. And we got the fence done just the day before this. And this was right before I left to come home. So this all happened very quickly. And here's a group picture with all the students that had come back. So I'm excited. The students were very much encouraged, and I heard so many testimonies from these students. When you have them as students, because of the language barrier, I don't always know everything about them. And so many of them had gone from the school, and they've started churches. One pastor had started a church, and he put that in someone else's hand, and now he's pioneering another church. And so it's amazing to hear these stories. One pastor, he said, when I come to the school, I heard the class about personal evangelism. He said, I went home and I started knocking on all the doors, telling people about Jesus. Some of them have become Sunday school teachers. Some of them become pastors. And it's amazing to hear all these testimonies about what God is doing through the students. And so that's what I have today. It's possible if you have questions that I can take those questions. It is. I didn't have a picture of it because it happened right before, and every single time I wanted to go get a picture of it, it was either raining or it was dark. So I didn't get a picture of it. I felt really bad afterwards that I didn't get a picture of the fence up. But it is up. They do, but because of the distance for me to get there, it's so hard. If it takes me about 7 hours to go, I would never make an afternoon service. But they do. Like Jacob's Church, he has two midweek services. Most of the time, they don't do evening services because of the darkness and people having to get home. So, like on Sunday, most churches maybe they may have two morning services, but they're not going to have anything after an afternoon service if they do. Some churches have afternoon services, but most they don't. It is word of mouth, and we're still working on a registration with the government. It's been a long, grueling process. Jacob had just gone to Dar es Salaam last week, which is the capital of Tanzania, and he just dealing with more of the paperwork of getting it finished. So we're working towards that, and once we get actually registered by the government, we'll feel a lot more free to spread our word about. But until then, we're kind of trying to keep it just to people that we know. The farthest probably comes from about 3 hours away. Not much farther than that. But I do have some students so we're in Singida, which is pretty close to a region called Manyara, and I've already got people asking me to start a Bible school in Manyara, and I said, well, we have a school here. Let's focus on this one first before we try to build another school. Yes. No, because without a pump, that picture is the part of the process of them drilling. So right now it's just capped. It's just waiting for us to take the next step. No, because it's 80 meters deep. So, until we get a pump. We have school Monday through Friday. Some of the students go home to preach in their churches. Other ones will stay there. Where do you get your supplies from? We get them right in town. Those things are easy enough to find. We get photocopies done in town.
Will they finish the process of the well while
They're working on it. The person that drilled, he's extremely busy. Right now, Tanzania is in the process of moving their capital city from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma. And because of that, all the drilling companies, they're so busy right now in Dodoma. So even the people that drilled for us, they drove from Dodoma, which was about 8 hours away, dug for us, and then the next day they went back to Dodoma. So they're very busy right now. So the person, he keeps promising to come back. He's got to do some tests and stuff for us before we decide what kind of pump we need. He needs to do an actual test on the pressure and some other things before we buy a pump. So we're working on the process now. I don't know how much we'll do. We might start the process of building the tower before I get back. It ranges drastically. It ranges from about $500 to $4,000, depending on what kind of pump you need. Because we want to have running water inside. Yes, we'll use solar. Yes.
you're obviously a good teacher, today, the students, maybe the ones you have now, are you pretty time oriented in the mornings? Like, do they get there pretty good?
Oh, they're very good. They're very good. Because I tell them when I say 10 o'clock, I mean 10 o'clock, not 10:01. But they don't have anything to do, so like they're in class. I have the problem when I'm going to churches when they're on their time schedule and I'm fitting into their schedule. But when they're at the school, they're all really good for time. I have not. Solar, it's kind of what's available. Solar is the primary energy in Tanzania. So the pumps are readily available, the batteries are readily available. Something like a gas powered, I could ask about it, but no one's going to know what I'm talking about.
So say that your biggest need right now is just for the
Right, which we've come so far. We just have a few more steps to take. And most of it is finding the right people to help us with those next steps so we don't make a wrong step. And part of it was I just ran out of time. If it took us forever to do all these other things to get the ground flattened and to work with these people, they were so busy to get them to come. I had a huge issue. We delayed the drilling for more than 1 week because I had an issue with Western Union where they misplaced $5,000, which I'm still working with them to get back. So it was a big process to get the money there in the first place. So just to your rest assured, Western Union has found it. I have to just go now to Western Union location and pick it up. But it was quite the process. I was on the phone one day with banks and Western Union for probably 4 or 5 hours just trying to sort how to get the money there.
How old were you when you first went to Africa, and how long have you been teaching now?
So I first went to Tanzania in 2011. So I was, subtract 8 years. So I was, someone help me, I'm 31 years old now. 22 years old when I first started. So now I've been teaching that whole time.
And your next trip back is when?
March, Lord willing. When I had left, we had raised just about $10,000, which is what we used for the drilling. So we need to raise more. I don't. Again, until they do the testing, it's hard for me to put out exact figures. When I initially said it, we needed $15,000, which is still the ballpark figure. It's probably going to take about $5,000 more to finish this process.
How was the process of learning the language then for you?
Slow, extremely slow. I've had problems because there's one, a lack of resources for learning Swahili, and two, some of the resources are wrong. I was using Duolingo one day, learning Swahili, and a Swahili person was next to me, and they said that's teaching you wrong. So it's difficult. It's not a language that's well known, which I tell people that in Tanzania they don't understand it. It's the language they know. But I try to tell them in the world, if you want to learn Swahili, it's difficult. And it's extremely different than English, grammatically and sentence structures. That's
So the gentleman who translates for you, he's not, I mean, could he teach you, or is he not available, or just too busy, or?
he could, like Jacob's way too busy to teach me.
Public transportation, do you have something yet, you?
No, right now my primary method is walk to the road, which is about 10 minutes, and then wait for a bajaji, which is a 3-wheel taxi, to drive by. And then I take that into town. Now, when I'm in town, it's a lot easier to find one to come back. But some days, like, there's a market nearby us that's in the opposite direction from town on Saturday, so I don't try to go to town on Saturday because I'll have a difficult time getting there. Jacob has a motorcycle, which a lot of times is the answer for me. So when we were building the fence, we needed a lot of money to build the fence, and the ATMs there cap you at a certain amount. And so I had to go 3 days in a row during my lunch breaks while teaching school to get enough money to get the materials for the fence. So like that, Jacob comes, gets me, I ride with him, we come back right back. When we were building the fence, we needed more wire. We measured wrong. And so I said to Jacob, we need 3 more rolls. And Jacob said, no, I think we need 4. And I said, no, I measured. We only need 3. Well, guess what? We started to hang it, and I needed 1 more. So I go with Jacob. We jump on the back of the motorcycle. We go to town. We have a 6-foot roll of wire tied to the back of the motorcycle. It was so crazy. They do that a lot. It is very normal there. I've got a desk that's about 6 feet wide, and one day Jacob just come to the school with it, and I said, how'd you get that here? Because we had ordered it, and he was working with the worker to make it. And he said, I put on my motorcycle. I said, okay, I'm not going to ask more questions. Yes. How many days? You get there in one day. But you travel all day long. What's a bit more than one day? By the time you add going to the airport and layovers, it's probably about 34 hours of traveling. Which when you come back, you gain 7 hours. That's like it never existed. So like this time I left in the morning from Tanzania and was back in America at 8 o'clock that night. But really it was because of the time change. You're going against the hours. I was really longer, but it felt like it was one day. Yes.
On that, so I know you probably like get in the plane and then you have to stop and then you get in another plane. Like, what's the longest in the air? Like the longest distance?
Depends on what airlines you fly. This time I had a 10-hour flight was my longest. But like when I flew Kenya Airways, that's about 13 hours for one, and then one short flight after that.
You mentioned you've been going there for whatever, 8+ years now. Do you think what other challenges would you say for the culture you have with that?
To the culture of Tanzania?
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, in Romania, you mentioned the government. Dealing with the government takes forever. Well, that's kind of the same deal in Romania. So I let my wife handle all that stuff. So I'm just, you've obviously gotten probably used to the culture more. However, what challenges do you have that
So for
with
for years I had known it was a process in Tanzania, but I hadn't experienced it myself, so it didn't seem real to me. But when you get married, it's still very common. In fact, it's everywhere. It's culture, no matter what religion you are, that you buy your wife from your future in-laws. So you go there, the wife's not allowed in the room, and all the family members will argue and debate about how much to pay for this wife. So I went with a friend, and he told me, I want you to come with me and be part of this process. And they told me I didn't have to say anything, which is good because I don't know what I would have said in a situation like that. But it was just a really unworldly experience, like the type of stuff that you don't think happens in the world anymore, but is still happening. And so the young man didn't have enough money. They started with the price of 10 cows, which even if you don't have cows, they ask for the price of 10 cows. And it was just a really weird experience, which I've had conversations with the students about. And some of them say we should stop doing this. And I say, well, really the way to do it is when you have daughters, don't require people to do this. And that can help you change it little by little bit. But it's a hard culture to change. And even this family, the parents themselves, they knew this young man didn't have a lot of money. They said, so just give whatever you want as a gift. Like, this is our culture. It's kind of what you got to do. But don't feel like you have to have any money. But there's an aunt and uncle who felt the exact opposite. And they did all the speaking. So the parents sat quiet and said nothing. Because before they had already told him, don't worry about it. But this aunt and uncle, they argued. But anyway, he got down to like less than 5 cows, I think, in the end.
How much does it cost?
About $100. Well, the cows are awfully scrawny compared to our cows. They look like donkeys.
So is all this like split up between the families? Is that why the uncle and aunt kept all
It's like a meeting where really just a few relatives from the groom's side will come, but as many as the relatives from the bride's side come. So in this meeting, there's about 10 people.
Would they split up like the cows and the family?
No, I don't know quite. Really, it's supposed to be for just that. But I think possibly, yes, they would get something.
This future wife, she's not present.
She's not present in it. which yeah, is very weird. It'd be, I guess it's weird for her not to be there, but it'd be weird, probably weird if she was there.
So some of these other challenges, say like the food and money and things like that,